Chapter 104 Covenant Renewals. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 1 to 13. And Moses went and spake these words unto all Israel. And he said unto them, I am 120 years old this day. I can no more go out and come in. Also the Lord hath said unto me, Thou shalt not go over this Jordan. The Lord thy God, he will go over before thee, and he will destroy these nations from before thee, and thou shalt possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before thee, as the Lord hath said. And the Lord shall do unto them as he did to Sihon and to Og, kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom he destroyed. And the Lord shall give them up before your face, that ye may do unto them according unto all the commandments which I have commanded you. Be strong and of a good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And Moses called unto Joshua, and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and of a good courage, for thou must go with this people unto the land which the Lord hath sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. And the Lord, he it is that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. And Moses wrote this law, and delivered it unto the priests, the sons of Levi, which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and unto all the elders of Israel. And Moses commanded them, saying, At the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel is come to appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, thou shalt read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Gather the people together, men and women and children, and thy stranger that is within thy gates, that they may hear, and that they may learn and fear the Lord your God, and observe to do all the words of this law, and that their children, which have not known anything, may hear, and learn to fear the Lord your God, as long as ye live in the land, whether ye go over Jordan to possess it. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 1 to 13. Deuteronomy chapters 31 to 33 gives us Moses' last words. He knows that very grim apostasies will in time mark Israel's future, and that God's judgments will be severe. Despite his intense partiality to his people, Moses' faith and hope are in God. God cannot be deflected from his purpose, nor can he ever fail. Moses is now 120 years old. He says, I can no more go out and come in. Verse 2. His statement perhaps reflects his sense of aging, more than an inability to function. It also reflects his awareness that God would take him before the nation crossed over Jordan. In Hebraic terms, 120 years meant 3 generations, a generation being generally reckoned as 40 years. The generation that left Egypt as adults was now dead, their children were aging men, and their grandchildren had reached maturity. The result of Moses' imminent death is that a change of leadership is necessary. His successor, Joshua, has already been chosen by God. This transfer of authority is made easier because Israel faces battle, and Joshua is a tested man. At the same time, religious authority is given to the Levites, the duty of teaching and covenant duties. In verses 9 to 13, we are told that Moses had written the text of Deuteronomy. It was now delivered to the priests, the Levites, and the elders of the clans or tribes. Every year, at the Feast of Tabernacles, this law was to be read in its entirety during the week of celebrations together. This was a legal requirement because it is covenant law. Covenants are treaties of law, and in this case, also a treaty of grace, because it is initiated by a great king, God, who in his mercy gives his law to a people. The requirement of such loyal covenants or treaties was that the covenant law be read to all the people regularly. God here stipulates the seventh or sabbatical year. The law is their charter of freedom, as the words of James reminded Christians. James chapter 1 verse 25, chapter 2 verse 12. The reading of the law was thus usually a joyful reminder of their privileged status, although when King Josiah ordered its reading after a long apostasy, the general disobedience meant fearfulness. 2 Kings chapter 23, 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verses 27 and 28. To break one's word to another man or to the state is no trifle, but to break one's word to God can be very deadly. The neglect of Deuteronomy in our time is no light matter. Every society requires law, and the law determines what is good and what is evil. Law is always a religious matter, and the only question is, which religion does a legal system express and establish? Every legal system is an establishment of religion because it defines good and evil. The reading of the law is thus both a civil and a religious act. It defines the moral imperative of the society. This reading is not the same as religious instruction in the law. According to J.A. Thompson, writing in the ancient Near East had been in common use for well over 1,000 years before Moses. In this ceremony, church and state, to use our modern terms, renewed their allegiance to God's covenant. The law was to be taught in every household. In this ritual, more than a private allegiance to the covenants was affirmed. The total community, church and state alike, to use our terms, had to be under the covenant and its law. The source of Israel's strength, as of any man or nation, can only be God the King. What Moses is told, God repeats later to Joshua in Joshua chapter 1, verses 2 to 9. Verses 6 and 8 are especially stressed. Be strong and of a good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And the Lord, he it is that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. This statement is expanded in Joshua chapter 1, verses 5 to 9. The reading of this book of the law was to take place in the sabbatical year, every 7th year. This was a time of rest from work and from debt. This sabbatical was a requirement of the law. It freed man from debt and oppression into godly living. For this reason, the law was seen as a cause for joy, and there are still echoes of this equation of the law with freedom and joy in Orthodox Jewish circles. Although this requirement was neglected in times of apostasy, its observance is recorded in Joshua chapter 8, verses 34 and 35, and in Nehemiah chapter 8. Deuteronomy is essentially established on the premise of covenantal family life. It is addressed to the families within the covenant, but also to the nation and to its priests and Levites. Biblical religion is not simply personal as pietism is. Its concern is all-inclusive. The individual, the family, the sanctuary, civil government, and all things else. It is a negation of biblical faith to limit its scope because God's government is universal. So too is His law and His providence. Every sphere of life, thought, and government, all kinds of activities, vocations, and sciences must be under His rule. To limit God is to deny Him. No less than Moses, we are all called by God to serve and obey Him, and to be His royal servants in our place and time in history.